We'd like to welcome Rabbi Weiss as the host again.
Thank you very much, everyone. And we are holding 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Tana Rabbanan. Haraitza ledabek Torah Nevi'im u'Ksuvim ke'echad. If somebody wants to attach a Torah Nevi'im and Ksuvim in one scroll, medabek. That's the opinion of Meir. Va'oisa b'roishay k'dei lagul amid. And he makes in the beginning enough to wrap around the pole. This is assuming that it only had wrapped around one pole. So you leave enough parchment to wrap around the pole until you start Bereshis. And then, and at the end, Kidei Lagol Hekif, in order to wrap around the full circumference of the Torah Nevi'im U'Ksuvim. U'Misayim Milmata, when you finish a chumash or you finish the Torah on the bottom, u'Maschil Milmala, and then you start the Navi from the top of the next page. And then if you want to divide, v'imbo lachtoich chaytich, and then if you want to cut. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Try, everybody else should be muted. Everybody else should be try to be muted. And if you come to separate it, you could separate it. Now, what does that have to do with if you stop on the bottom, you start right away on the top? So, my kamar, hachi kamar. The reason why you have to start right away on the top is because if you come to cut it, it would be no good to start a new Navi with blank on top. So therefore, you start right away from the beginning of the column. Says the Gemara, Uraminu, Tchila Sefer v'Sefer Kidei Lagal. The beginning in order to wrap, and the end in order to wrap. Now, what does that mean? Kidei Lagal Mai. Wrap what? Kidei Lagal Amud, to wrap around the pole. Then Kasha Hekef, then it's Shver, because at the end we said you have to wrap around the full circumference. Ikadei Lagol Hekef, and if it means to wrap around the full circumference, Kasha Omud, then it's not good in the beginning, where you don't need enough to wrap around the circumference, it's enough just to wrap around the pole. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, let's start in Ketani. In the beginning it means to wrap around the Amud, and at the end it means to wrap around the full circumference. Rav Ashi says, no, this is talking about a Torah scroll, which we know is wrapped around both 2 poles. Rav Ashi Amar Kitan Yahi b'Sefer Torah, the wrap around the Sefer Torah, and therefore there has to be enough on either side just to wrap around the pole on either end. Kedetanya, kol asvarim niglalin mitchilas and l'seifan. All svarim are on one pole and they're rolled from the beginning till the end. The Sefer Torah, which is on 2 poles, niglal le'emtziyosai, is rolled to the middle. V'oisalei amod elach ve'elach, and there's a pole on either end. Amar Rabbi Elazar Reb Tzadok, kacha yikaisri Yisrael shem Yerushalayim oisin sifreim. So did the ones who write the svarim in Yerushalayim make their svarim. Tana Rabbanan, ein oisin Sefer Torah loy orkoi yoiser al hekefai. Its length is never more than its circumference. V'loy hekefai yoiser al orkoi. And not, its circumference is never more than its length. So generally, it was a very, very small Sefer Torah, and the height equaled its circumference, which was very hard to do, as the Gemara will proceed to tell us. Can I be heard by everybody?
Yes. Okay, so good.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Shalu es Rebbe, Shir Sefer Torah Bekama. They wanted to know how to compute it ahead. So what is the proper size of a Sefer Torah? Amalahan b'gvil. Now gvil is where they use the full hide of the animal. The full hide of the animal without it being split in half. So there, where it's going to be thick, and the circumference is going to be thick, shisha, it's enough 6 tvachim high for the height. Biklaf bikama, what about if it's hide split in half, and the klaf is the outer part of the hide towards the outside of the animal, what then would the height be? Says Rebbe Eini Yodea. I don't know that from experience. Rav Huna Kosav Shivin Sifrei Doraisa. Rav Huna wrote 70 Torahs. V'lo Yisram Alei Elachad. He only had one time where the circumference was equal to the height. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Kosav Chad Amashke de Igle. He did only one Sefer Torah on the hide of a calf, v'Yisram Alei, and in that one, he made it exact the circumference and the height. Yovu be'Rabbanim Einayu, they gave him an ayin hara, v'noch nafshe, and he passed away. Ayin hara is very dangerous. You know, it says that we never heard again from Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah after they came out of the Kivshin Age. And one opinion is they died from the ayin hara of the great miracle. Amrei Rabbanan Rav Hamnuna Kosev Ramami Arba Meya Sifrei Torah. He wrote in his lifetime 400 Sifrei Torah, which sounds very improbable. So Amalu Rav Hamnuna said maybe it means Dilma Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Kosev. In other words, we know that people write an ois in the Sefer Torah in order to have the mitzvah of Ksiva Sefer Torah. Maybe in 400 svarim they saved him the pasuk of Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Moirasha Kilas Yaakov, and he did it in 400 different Sifrei Torah. Amalei Rava Reb Zeira, and also we have such another case. Rava said to Reb Zeira, not to Reb Yanai Arba Meya Karmei. Reb Yanai in his lifetime planted 400 vineyards. Again, a very unlikely thing. Amalei, maybe it means the minimum vineyard. Dilma Shtayim Keneged Shtayim, 2 vines, parallel 2 vines, Va'achas Yotzei Zanav, and a 5th vine coming out as a tail. That's a minimum vineyard, and maybe he planted 400 such vineyards. So now the Gemara asks, Meisvei, you're telling me that the shear of a Sefer Torah that's 6 tvachim high has a circumference of 6 tvachim, which would mean that it has a diameter of 2 tvachim, because it's a ratio of 3 to 1. So this is going to be a problem, as the Gemara says, Meisvei. Oren she'asa Moshe, the oren that Moshe Rabbeinu made in the Mishkan, Amasayim v'chetzi orkoi, it was 2.5 amas long, v'ama v'chetzi rachbai, 2.5 amas wide, v'ama v'chetzi kamasai, and an amma and a half tall. Now, it's the opinion of the Tanakama over here that it's ba'ama bas shisha tvachim. It's an amma that's made up of 6 tvachim. So therefore, its length, if it's 2.5 tvachim, so that's 15 tvachim, right? Because if an amma is 6 tvachim and it's 2.5 ammas, so that's 15 tvachim, right? Because 2 ammas is 12 tvachim, and a half an amma is 3 tvachim, so it's 15 tvachim long. V'aluchais, the tablets, there were 2 tablets. Orkan shisha v'rachban shisha. Its length was 6, and its width was 6. V'ovyan shloisha, and its thickness was 3. This, by the way, is what I always tell you, that the Gemara says clearly that the luchas were not rounded on top. They were a square, right? The length was 6 and the width was 6. So it was a square, like the new stone chumash has on it, luchas that are square. Lubavitch's farm always have luchas that are square. It's a big problem, the rounded luchas. So anyway, v'aluchas orkan shisha v'rachban shisha. The luchas had a length of 6, a width of 6, v'ovyan shloish, and a thickness of 3 tvachim. Menachos keneged orkai shel aron, and they're placed against the length of the aron. So if the length goes along the length, so it's 6 plus another 6, it takes up 12 tvachim of the 15th. Kama luchas oichlas ba'aron, 6 plus the second luchas is another 6, that's 12. That's shnayim asar tvachim. So since we said the length is 15, there's left 3 tvachim. Nishtayru sham shloisha tvachim. What do we do with those 3 tvachim? Tzei mehem tefach, we deduct the tefach for the thickness of the walls. Chetzia l'kaisel zeh v'chetzia l'kaisel zeh. So we're left with 2 tvachim. Nishtayru sham shnei tvachim. What was put in those 2 tvachim? Shebahem sefer Torah munach. In them, the sefer Torah written by Moshe Rabbeinu was placed. Shenemar ein ba'aron rak shnei luchas avanim. It wasn't in the aron but 2 the luchas asher niach shamaysh. Now that's a double miyat. Ein and rak is a double miyat. My ein ba'aron rak. That's a miyat achamiyat. That's a limitation following a limitation. The ein miyat achamiyat al rabbi sefer Torah. That comes to include the sefer Torah. Shemunach ba'aron. Now that's the length of the aron. Pirnas the aron la'orkai. Say your pirnas aron la'rachbai. Let's figure out the aron on its width. Now we said, what was the width of the aron? We said that the width of the aron was amma v'chetzi rachbai, an am and a half. So that's 6 plus 3. That's 9 tvachim. So say your pirnas aron la'rachbai. Kama luchas oichlois ba'aron. How much of the 9 did the luchas eat up? Since it has a width of 6, so shisha tvachim. So nishtayru sham shloisha tvachim. You have left there 3 tvachim. Now we have to deduct for the thickness of the walls. Say mehem tefach, a tefach chetzi l'kaisel zeh v'chetzi l'kaisel zeh, half for each wall. Nishtayru sham shnei tvachim. We have left 2 tvachim. Now why do we need in the width 2 tvachim? In order that it should be easy to pull out the sefer Torah. Shelo yeh sefer Torah nichnas v'yotzei k'shudachot. That it shouldn't be tight to remove the sefer Torah. Divrei Rameir. That's the computation of Rameir, who computes this with an amma of 6 tvachim. Now Rabbi Yehuda computes it with an amma of 5 tvachim. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ba'amma bas chamisha tvachim. It's an amma of 5 tvachim. Oh, if it's an amma of 5 tvachim, so the length is 2.5. So that's 2 is 10, and a half is 2.5. So that means the length is 12.5. Oh, now we're going to have no room for the sefer Torah because the length is 12.5, and the length of the 2 luchas are 12. V'aluchas orkan shisha v'rachban shisha. The luchas, as we said, were long 6 tvachim, wide 6 tvachim, v'avyon shloisha, and its thickness of 3 tvachim, menachas ba'orkai shel aron, and they lie along the length of the aron. So, luchas eichlas, kama luchas eichlas baron, how much do they eat up from the aron? Oh, well, we said each one is 6, so that's 12. That's 12 of 12.5. Shnayim asa shvatim, nishtayru sham chatzi tefach. You have left a half a tefach, which is just enough for the thickness of the walls. According to Rabbi Yehuda, they were less thick. Etzba l'kaisel zeh ve'etzba l'kaisel zeh. A finger breadth, which is a thumb for one wall and a thumb for the other wall. So no sefer Torah. So pinas the aron la'orkai. We figured out the length of the aron. Tzeyu pirnas aron la'rachbai. So now we said it's 1.5 wide. So that's 7.5 because it's a 5 tvachim amma. So that's 7.5 tvachim. Kama luchas oichlas baron. How much of that 7.5 does it eat up? Shisha tvachim, because the width of the luchas was 6. Nishtayru sham tefach u'mechza. Now we need to take off the mechza for the thickness of the wall. Say me'em chatzi tefach etzba u'mechza l'kaisel zeh, an etzba and a half for one wall. The etzba u'mechza l'kaisel zeh, and an etzba and a half for the other wall. Nishtayru sham tefach. We're left there. The tefach sheboy amudav oimdin. There was a tefach because there were thin silver rods on either side of the luchas. Shenemar, Apirion Osalei Amelech Shlomo. Shlomo Amelech made himself some kind of a chair that he was carried with. Me'atzei alavanim, from the cedar of Lebanon. Amud of Asa Kesef, its rods were made out of silver. Refidasa Zav, its back or covering is made out of gold. And Merkava, its seat was made out of argaban, purple. And the Amud of Kesef is a reference, an allusion to the silver rods that were on either side of the luchas. Now, where did the Sefer Torah go? So if you remember, when the Pelishtim captured the Aron, and they returned it. They returned it with a chest with gold in it as a tribute. The erga sheshibru by Plishtim doirin l'Elokei Yisrael, the chest which the Plishtim sent a gift to Elokei Yisrael, munach b'tzidai, was placed in the Kodesh Kedoshim alongside the Aron. Shneimar ves klei azov asher shevosim loy osham, and the golden utensils that were sent as a guilt offering by the Philistines, tosimu be'ergas, placed in the chest, mitzidai, v'shilachtam oisai v'alach, and they sent it to the Jews, and it went by itself. And this chest remained in the Kodesh Kedoshim alongside the Aron, v'olav Sefer Torah munach, and upon it the Sefer Torah rested. Shenem alakoicha Sefer Torah hazeh, v'samtem oisai mitzad Aron, and place it on the side of the Aron, bris Hashem. It's now mitzadu munach. So Rabbi Yehuda maintains, you see, it was on the side, v'loy b'seichai, and not inside. Omani mekayim ein ba'aron rak. What does he do with the ein mirach amiyat l'rabbis? What is that coming to include? It includes the shivrei luchais, the broken luchais, shemunachin ba'aron. They were placed under the luchas inside the aron. We learn out from that, by the way, that we give kavod to a Talmud Chacham, if Rachmanul son, a Talmud Chacham, has senility or dementia or forgets his learning, we still give kavod, just like we keep the Shivrei Luchais in the Aron Kodesh. Now, now here comes the question. According to Rameir, that the Sefer Torah fit in 2 Tvachim, because remember, there was 15 Tvachim, 6 plus 6, and 1 tefach for the walls, so you left 2 tefachim for the Sefer Torah. But v'isal kedai the Sefer Torah kefay vav tefachim, if the circumference of the Sefer Torah was 6 tefachim, michtei kol sheyesh be'kefay shloisha tefachim, whatever has in its circumference 3 tefachim, yesh by reichiv tefach. It has a diameter of a tefach. So therefore, since it has a circumference of 6, it has a diameter of 2 tefachim. And since we said that the Sefer Torah was rolled to the middle, you also need the space in between the two rolls, and therefore it's more than 2 tefachim. It's more than 2 tefachim because of Rafcha the Beini, the space in between the 2 rolls. So betrei pushke, if more than 2 tefachim, how did it fit in 2 tefachim? Eichi Yosef, Amar Rav Bar Yaakov will have to say that Sefer Ezra, the Sefer Hazara, the Sefer in the Hazara, l'tchilasa yu niglal. It's only on 1 pole, but still 2 doesn't fit exactly in 2. Va'akate trei betrei Eichi Yosef, they didn't stup it in. Amar Rav Ashi dekarch be pursa v'karchei la'el. You're right. That they left a little bit of it rolled extra on the top. And in other words, they didn't roll it to the pole tightly, but they left a little bit extra from Bereshis rolled on the pole that sat on top of it so that it was less than 2 tefachim. Says the Gemara, the karach by pursa v'karchei la'el, that a little extra rolled above. So the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, before the Plishtim sent the chest, where did the Sefer Torah go? Rabbi Yehuda mekame delesi erga Sefer Torah heichi have. Where did they put it? Since there was no room in the Aron, says the Gemara, Yosef dafa heichi have Yosef. Where did it go? Says the Gemara, dafa have nafik minei. A board came out of the Aron. The Yosef ilvei Sefer Torah, and on that board sat the Sefer Torah. Reb Meir, and according to Reb Meir, it says in the pasuk that it was put mitzad Aron, but according to him, it was put inside the Aron. Reb Meir, hi mitzad Aron, my ovidlay. What does he do with the pasuk that says that it was on the side of the Aron? Says the Gemara, he needs it. The mislach lay mitzad, that they put the Sefer Torah after the 2 luchas, and they didn't put it in between the 2 luchas. The misnach lay mitzad v'loy misnach beinei luchei, and it wasn't placed in between the 2 luchas in the middle. But ula'olam begavei, it's inside the aron minatzad, from the side. Says the Gemara, Meir Amudei Heichi Avekaime. Where did the silver rod sit? Says the Gemara, Mibroi, they sat outside. Meir Shivrei Luchas to Menachem Ba'aron Milalon, since he uses Ein Ba'aron Rak as a miyat achamiyat l'rabbis to say for Torah, how does he know that the Shivrei Luchas was put into Aron? Nafkalei mid Rav Huna, he learns it out from Rav Huna. Dam Rav Huna, my dichsiv asher nikra shem, as it was read, asher nikra shem, shem Hashem tzvakos, yoyeshiv akrum alav. So it says Shem twice, Asher Nikra Shem, which was read the name Shem Hashem Tzvakos Yoshev Akruvim Alav, what the Kruvim sat upon the Aron. So since it says Shem twice, Malamed Shaluchas V'Shivrei Luchas Menachas Ba'aron. The Idach, and Rabbi Yehuda, who learns it out from the Ein Ba'aron Rak, what does he do with Shem? Ha'hu mebayle likid Rabbi Yochanan. Am Rabbi Yochanan, Am Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Malamed Shashem v'kol kinuyav. Hashem's name and all of its substitutes. There's different kinuyim like tzvakos, like Elokai, like Eloha, like and the Shem of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and according to some, the Shem Mem Beis were all written down and placed in the Aron. Says the Gemara, "V'idach nami bebayilei lachi." Rameir also needs it for that. Says the Gemara capitulates. Einach nami. El shivrei luchas de menachem ma'aron minale. How do we know that the shivrei luchas were placed in the Aron? Nafkalei midetani Rabbi Yosef. The Tani Rabbi Yosef, it says asher shibarta, that which you broke, v'samtam. And the juxtaposition of that which you broke and v'samtam tells us that it was placed in the Aron. Malamid haluchas v'shivrei luchas, what you broke was menachem ba'aron. V'idach, and Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do with asher shibarta? Ha'om ebaylei l'kidrei shlakish. The amarei shlakish asher shibarta. We darshan from the extra asher shibarta. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe yeyasher koichacha sheshibarta. I thank you for breaking the luchos. You should be strengthened for breaking the luchos, even though Moshe Rabbeinu did that on his own. But he saved Klal Yisrael because he destroyed the evidence that they were given that they shouldn't worship other idols. Tan Rabbanan, Sidron Shel Nevi'im, the order of the Nevi'im is Yoshua first, then Shoftim, then Shmuel, then Malachim, then Yirmiyah, then Yechezkel, then Yeshaya, and then Shnayim Asur, the 12 short prophets. Now, Michtei, the problem is the 12 short prophets starts with Hosea, but Hosea came before Yeshaya. Michtei, Hosea Kodim, Dichsiv Tchilas Dvar Hashem Hosea. The first word of Hashem is from Hosea. Now that can't be literal. Did he speak first with Hosea? But what it means is, he was first of the 4 Nevi'im of that period. So you see that Hosea was before Yeshaya. So why is Hosea afterwards in Trei Asur and Shnayim Asur? He should be before Yeshaya. Says the Gemara, V'liktem el Hosea bereisha. You should be first before Yeshaya. Says the Gemara, Kevan dichsiv nuvu'asei gabe chages zechariah malachi. Since the nevuah of Hosea was written by the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah together with Chagai Zechariah Malachi, so therefore, the Chagai Zechariah Malachi was Seif Nevi'im Ave. They were all the way at the end. So Choshev Leibadayu, they put him together with Trei Asur. Says the Gemara, well, why don't they make a separate Megillah for Hoshea, a separate skull for Hoshea, v'lichtavei l'chudei, and then put him before Yeshaya, v'lichtamei. Says, we're afraid since Hoshea is very small, it would get lost. Aidi dezuter mirkas. So now the Gemara asks a different question. We said the order was Yirmiyah, Yechezkel, and Yeshaya. So the Gemara says, but chronologically, Michte Yeshaya, Kodim Yirmiyah Yechezkel. He came before Yirmiyah and Yechezkel. Liktem Eli Yeshaya Bereisha. It should say Yeshaya first. So the Gemara says, Kavan de Malachim Sofei Churbana. Since at the end of the Nevi'im of Malachim, it starts with destruction. V'Yirmiyah Kulei Churbana. And Yirmiyah is all destruction. V'Yechezkel Reisha Churbana V'Seifa Nechamasa. Yechezkel starts with destruction and then ends with consolation. V'Yeshaya Kulei Nechamasa, and Yeshaya is all consolation. So therefore, Sam Chinon Churbana LeChurbana. We put Yirmiyah, which is Churban, next to Malachim, which is Churban, and we put Nechama next to Nechama. We said that towards the end of Yechezkel, there's consolation. So we put that next to Yeshaya, which is all consolation. Now, the later prophets is Sidron Shoksuvim, is Rus, and then Sefer Tehillim, which is David, V'Eiv. This puts Eiv later, or Mishlei, which is the writing of Shlomo and Keles and Shir Hashirim, the Kinnis, Eicha, then Daniel, Megillas Esther, Ezra, and Divrei Hayamim, and Chronicles. So the Gemara says, but wait a second, there's a Mani Yamar that Eiv was in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Eiv was in the time of Bilam. Eiv was in the final solution with Paro. Olaman Yama Eiv b'mei Moshe, so it should say Eiv first. It should put Eiv first. Says, well, we're not going to put Eiv first because it's Paranis, the sufferings of Eiv. Says, well, Rus Nami Paranasi. Rus also has Paranis. It has the famine. It has the death of Elimelech. Says, Paranis Dislay Achris. That's suffering that has a hope, a future, because from her came Malchus based David. Why was she called Rus? She Mimenu David. They came from her David. Says the Gemara. Okay, now we're going to learn the authorship, but we will save that from tomorrow. Did everybody hear me well?
Yes, good evening. Yes, thank you, everybody.
Okay, now we're going to don't go anywhere, Rabbi. Say now we're going to do the Mishnah Yomis.